talking today with Rich Czop of Caledonia, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, so Rich, we'll begin at the beginning. Where were you born and in what year?
Passaic, New Jersey, 1947.
Okay, and did you grow up in New Jersey?
We moved when I was 5. Before I started school.
Okay.
We moved to Detroit.
All right, and what was your family doing for a living at that point?
My father was an electrician. My mother was a cashier in a grocery store.
Okay, all right. And then did you finish high school there?
In Detroit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Detroit Catholic Central.
Okay, and what
graduated 1965.
Okay, and what did you do after you graduated?
I went to St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana, for my first year of college. You know, I came out in the middle of the pack at Catholic Central, and I thought, you know, if you want to be a doctor, you should be smarter than that. And so I better go somewhere without any distractions and study hard and see if I can do it. I was in pre-med, and I forgot that Catholic Central had pretty much skimmed off, you know, the upper smart guys. And to be average in there wasn't all bad. So I did well at St. Joe's and transferred up to Michigan State. I couldn't stand all the corn any longer.
All right. And then how long did you stay at Michigan State?
I started there in the fall of '66, and I left 2 weeks into winter term, January of 1968.
Okay. And what prompted you to leave school?
The war was going on. My best friend was in Vietnam now for a number of months, and he got wounded at least once before at that time. And yeah, what I was doing was, you know, I was walking to embryology at 8 in the morning, 8 degrees, and going to study Necator americanus gill system, the mud puppy. And I thought, what the hell are you doing here? You know, why is he there and you're not? So I quit and didn't take. I knew I'd be drafted, so I just volunteered for the draft.
Okay, and can you explain how that worked or what that was, to volunteer for the draft as opposed to just being drafted?
Yeah, I guess I notified the draft board that I want to volunteer for the draft, and that was it. It was pretty easy.
So I guess it lets you pick the time when you go in.
That's what it was. I figured, you know, nothing going on in my life right now, and I'm not going to wait around. Let it, you know, 10 months I might be in something else good, and then they want to draft me. So let's get it on.
Right. Okay. So now, what's the process of actually getting you into the military? You volunteered for the draft. What's the next step?
Just come on down, Fort Wayne, Detroit. And I went in, had my physical, and later that day I'm at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Okay. Now, how serious was the physical?
They just wanted to make sure you could stand up and move, had a pulse, you were in.
Okay. Now, sometimes you hear stories about people trying to beat the system and do something at the physical to get themselves disqualified.
Yeah.
Did you see any of that when you went through?
I don't recall seeing any of it. I sure wasn't interested in doing any of it. I wanted to go.
Okay.
So, and most everybody that was there was willing to go.
All right. How much did you know about the war in Vietnam at that point? Had you paid much attention to the news?
I had paid pretty close attention because, you know, my friend got drafted, and he went to Fort Knox, I think, and then we were hoping he'd go get something easy to do. Next, he went down to Fort Polk Infantry School, so that didn't look too good. then he goes to a language school at El Paso to learn Vietnamese. So, there was little doubt of where he was going. And, I watched the news. Our involvement escalated, and there was hearings, and Dean Rusk was Secretary of State, I believe, and Fulbright was on the Armed Services Committee. And they're explaining why we're there. There's the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization that we signed on to. Anybody, any communist country invades another country will be there in Southeast Asia. That's what happened. It seemed pretty straightforward.
Okay.
And
was there an anti-war movement that you noticed at Michigan State while you were there, or had that not really gotten rolling yet?
No, it was there. I was too busy studying, and didn't pay much attention. It didn't interfere with anything I was doing.
Right.
Then, later it would.
Yeah, because after the Tet Offensive, things tended to get worse. But okay, so you've gone in, so early '68, and then when did you get to Fort Knox?
Well, I went to the induction center April 11th, 1968. That night I was at Fort Knox.
Okay, all right. And what kind of reception did you get at Fort Knox?
I don't remember. Get off the bus and follow this guy.
Okay.
That was one thing was interesting though, when when we finally we took a plane from Metro down to Fort Knox, I guess, and bus took us. It's dark now. It's night, but must have been about 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I look at the street sign where we stopped. The street was Delaware. That's where I lived in Detroit. So I thought that was interesting.
Okay. And then what kind of processing do you get once you arrive?
Well, that night I don't remember anything. The next day we went to a bunch of paperwork and stuff like that.
Okay. Do you get your hair cut and uniforms and those things?
It wasn't just then. A couple of days probably.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that went on there, though.
All right. And were they shouting at you, or was it just, here, go do this, go do that?
Both.
Okay. All right. So how long does it take for you to actually start training?
I think it was probably, I'm thinking 3 or 4 days before we got assigned to a barracks and a unit for training.
Okay. And then what did the training consist of?
There's a lot of physical training. There were classes and a whole bunch of stuff, hand-to-hand combat, bayonet, first aid, bunch of stuff.
Okay. And how much emphasis was there on discipline?
Plenty. Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't want to make mistakes or mess up, or, There was, in fact, the basic training thing, there was an award. There were 3 awards in basic: trainee of the cycle, best physical training test, and high score on the proficiency test on everything that we learned. And I got the one for the highest proficiency test.
Okay.
I was going to do as good a job at being a soldier as I could possibly do.
Okay. And so you were in pretty good physical shape when you went down there?
Yeah. I joined Universal Spa or something in Detroit, and worked out for 8 weeks before going to basic, because I didn't want to die in basic. And so I was in good shape. And there was one thing we did a lot of that I've seen other guys talk about, was the bars, the horizontal bars, going across those. And I got so good on that, I could hold one bar, skip the next, and get the next, all the way across and back. And I was ready.
All right.
So, but then physical therapy, physical training
yeah.
test. First thing in the morning, the bars were covered with dew.
Oh.
I got 3 bars and slipped off. And they says, "Okay, you're done." I said, "Wait a minute, they're soaked. You know, I can do these things blindfolded and backwards." "No, you're done." That was that.
Okay.
Because I wanted a PT test too. I wanted to max
You
that.
wanted to do that one. All right. Now, what happened to people if they screwed up?
KP, extra kitchen police, you know. I don't, you could get an Article 15, I guess. I don't even know what that was, some minor disciplinary correction. And that was about it, I guess.
Okay.
My bunkmate went AWOL in about week 5, so then he came back.
Okay. All right. So, because sometimes, some people in some training cycles in some places, they talk about, sergeants hitting people or other kinds of more physical abuse and things like that.
No, I didn't see that. I was platoon guide. I was in charge of our 40-guy thing. So I had a lot of interaction with the cadre, and I didn't have any troubles.
All right. Well, you were doing a good job, and if you had your guys pretty well in line, then they were good with that. Now, were you older than most of the other recruits?
Maybe a year or two.
Okay.
I was 21 when I went in.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys are 18, 19.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, and then how long was basic?
8 weeks.
Okay. Now, at the end of basic, did you know what kind of training you were going to get next?
Yeah. In reception station, they asked you, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be an operating room specialist." I thought that would be safe. And they say, "Okay, and where would you like to do it?" I said, "Hawaii." So, why not? And so when the next assignment showed up at the end of basic, I was going to Fort Sam Houston, the medical training center, down in San Antonio. So I thought, I did it. I got it. So I was that was a 12-week program, and I was in about week 9, and I said, when do I get to go to the operating room specialist school? They say, "Oh, after this, if you re-up for another year." I said, "Well, what if I don't re-up for another year? What am I?" He says, "A combat medic." So.
All right. Now, what did the combat medic training consist of?
Everything that was going on was, well, combat was part of it. First aid in the field, identifying booby traps. What else? It was like rudimentary medicine, really, and I was enjoying it. There was a lot of physical work too, but basically I enjoyed it, and I graduated, I think, 3rd in my class of 440, and the 2 guys ahead of me came down for a preliminary course 2 weeks before, and were in some sort of red hat position or something. So that was that.
All right. So you did well there. So when do you finish then?
I did well with the academics.
Okay.
I called home on a Sunday, and my mom told me that Tom's been wounded again. I said, "How bad?" "He's paralyzed from the neck down."
Oh boy.
That was tough. So that was a Saturday, I don't know what day, Sunday. And the next day I went to the orderly room to see if orders had been cut yet for our next duty, and because I wanted to see if I could get somewhere near Walter Reed where he was, so I helped take care of himself like this. And they said, "No, the order's been cut, and you can't do anything like that." And you know, have a nice day.
Mm-hmm.
So then after that, I called Tom. He'd had his surgery to stabilize his broken neck earlier in that day, and I talked to him, you know, and he was in pain and stuff. And so that was a Saturday, and I left when we broke for the weekend. I went right across the street to the battalion orderly room, and I saw the officer of the day. Can I help you? I says, my best friend, you know, got blown up. He's quadriplegic. He's in Walter Reed, and I just talked to him. And I went to the company orderly room to see if there was any chance I could get stationed near there. And I just wanted to check one more time. And he says, no, orders have been cut, but you know, we're sorry about your friend. And he was really nice. I was devastated. And the following Monday, I'm called out of formation back down to the aid station. What do you mean busting in on the officer of the day at battalion and demanding having your orders changed? I said, that's not what happened. And they didn't give a shit about that. And so I wound up being restricted. I'd stay in the company area after training, sign in every hour at the orderly room till lights out at 10 o'clock. And this was not good for me. And I was getting in fights, and one of the guys that lived in our barracks worked in the orderly room. And he told, I think he told somebody at battalion that what was going on with me and so I got called out of formation that day. So you got to go down to the battalion orderly room. So I figured, you know, it's going to be a firing squad this time, more than likely. So, but I went down there, and I, you know, first sergeant greets me, hello, you know, and then he takes me into Major Wood, and he says, I understand you're having some trouble at the company. You want to tell me about it? And I told him. And he says, and they restricted you for that? I said, yes, sir. Picks up the phone. First sergeant, get this man's company on the phone. Get him off that restriction immediately. And tell him there's an open door policy on this base. Anybody needs to see anybody can go do it. Click. And I'm sitting there with my jaw dropped, and he says, where'd you say your friend was? Walter Reed, neurosurgical unit. Gets the phone up, gets a hold of Tom. He says, I'm here with your friend Rich down at Fort Sam, Houston. How are you doing? So they're talking for a while, and he gives me the phone, you know, and we talked, and he said, okay, why don't you come back Wednesday, we'll give him another call. So I couldn't believe my ears, you know. So, and then when I got the graduation ceremony, and I was up to get the award for my placement in the class, the guy that was Major Wood was presenting. The guy handing him the certificates was one of the guys that restricted me. And Major Wood gives me the thing, and he turns to the other guys, maybe now they'll stop messing with you. So
there's at least one good guy in the Army. All right. Now, what orders did you now get? Were you still going straight to Vietnam? Or?
No, I got orders back to Fort Knox. I was going to be a corpsman at Ireland Army Hospital. And which was kind of ironic. There's one of the guys that I liked at AIT. He got orders for Vietnam. He was married and had a kid. And I saw him before we took off in different directions. You know, Gary Smith was his name. I said, Gary, you know, I said, I'm sorry. You know, if I could go in your place, I would. He says, yeah, that's all you need to do is go to the order room and tell them you want your orders changed again.
Yeah.
Thanks anyway, though, but good luck. So I went to Fort Knox.
Okay. And then what were you doing there?
I was in charge, I was in charge of an orthopedic ward, scheduling people, taking care of everything, people, and I really liked it. They knew I wanted to go to medical school, to be a doctor, and so I worked hard to learn everything I could, take as good a care of people as I could, and enjoyed it.
All right. Now, were the patients there mostly people who were stationed on the base and got injured, or
No.
or did you get people?
There were some of those, but a lot of them were from the air evacuation system from Vietnam.
Okay.
And were back. This would be the closest hospital for them to be at near their homes.
All right.
So there was a lot of them.
Okay. And did you talk to them much about their experiences? Or?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it was all the time.
All right. Now, did you figure that sooner or later they were going to send you to Vietnam, or did you think you were going to stay there the whole time?
Well, since I had volunteered to go as soon as I got there, yeah, I knew I'd be going. Every month a levy would come down, and people from our unit that were going to be sent to Vietnam would be on there. And every month the levy came down, I'm not on it. Another one, I'm not on it. Now 7 months, and I'm not on it. There had been a general on the floor visiting somebody one time, and I told him, I'm trying to go. Okay. That was the last I heard of that. Then there was a command sergeant major came in, saw a guy that was in a bunker, was going to throw a guy in the bunker with him was going to throw a white phosphorus grenade, and as he got up, he got shot. The grenade dropped in the bunker. This guy went over, grabbed the white phosphorus grenade, and as he let go of it, it exploded. And he was all burned up. And the command sergeant major had come to see him. And I told him about my situation. Bam! Next month I'm on that levee, and I'm out of there.
All right. Now, so you are spending kind of 1968, or much of it kind of going through training, and by the end of the year you're at Fort Knox. Now, while you were caught up in that, were you paying attention to what was going on in the country? Because you had a lot of crazy stuff going on. I guess King had been assassinated before you went in.
I was in basic, sitting on the back porch, polishing my boots when I heard about that.
Yeah, because you had King assassinated, and then Bobby Kennedy assassinated. You have the Democratic Convention and the riots and all that stuff.
It was madness. It was total madness.
And how much of that, did any of that kind of carry over onto these bases, or was that just the Army functioning normally?
We just did what we did, as if none of that had happened. You were there to get trained to go do something somewhere and do it well.
Okay.
And but in my mind, you know, I was watching all the time what was happening and disturbed by it.
All right. So when do you find out you're going to Vietnam?
Yeah. Well,
Was it early '69 or still late '68?
it was early '69.
Okay.
Came down on the levee, got a 30-day, I think I got a 30-day leave before going into combat area. And that's when I was watching the news and the Chicago business and all that stuff. And yeah.
Now, did you just go home for that period of time, or what did you do? You had 30 days off.
Well, first I went to see Tom.
Okay.
He was now at Cleveland Rehab Hospital. I don't know how many months into a rehab program. And I went to see him, and he says, you know, why'd you do that? And why'd you do it? I told you it was hell.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you get hurt, your mother will kill me.
Yeah.
And so then I was there a couple days and saw him a lot. And then when I was going to leave, he says, get me that paper bag out of that bedstand there. Yeah, okay. I give it to him. And he's got some use of the hands, you know, C5-6 quad. And he's reaching into this bag and fiddling around. I says, you need a hand? He says, no, I got two. He gets out. I had given him, before he left, the St. Christopher medal, gold St. Christopher medal. And he got it out. He says, here, you're going to need it. I said, I don't know, it didn't work too good for you. He says, I'm alive. It worked. So, and then I left.
All right. And I don't know, how did your family kind of act or whatever when you're back home?
Yeah, my dad understood, you know, because January or Christmas, might have been New Year's Eve of that year, we're across the street with neighbors at party and stuff, and I told him, I said, Tom gets wounded again, I'm going to drop out of school and go. And I expected to hear an argument. And he says, I did the same thing in World War II. So he understood. They knew what I was doing and why.
All right.
They knew Tom, you know, all loved him.
Now, did you get any kind of sort of preparation or orientation for Vietnam before you left, or did they just send you off on a plane to Vietnam?
I don't remember anything happening at Fort Knox, but when you get to Vietnam, you get your processing stuff again. Then I wound up with, there was a place called Reliable Academy for the 9th Infantry Division.
Okay.
That was your orientation to the place where I was going to be.
All right. So we'll back up a little then. How do they actually get you to Vietnam? You're in Detroit, then from there what happens?
We drive to New Jersey, family reunion-like thing, see the relatives, and then, because I'll be leaving from Fort Dix, where my dad had been. And they drove me to Fort Dix, and I think I stayed one night there or something, and then to an airport by Fort Dix, boarded a Trans-International Airways Boeing 707 charter, flew to Oakland, flew to Honolulu, flew to Wake Island, flew to Manila in the Philippines, flew to Vietnam.
All right. And where do you land in Vietnam?
Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base.
Okay, so outside of Saigon.
Yeah, Bien Hoa was the biggest base there, there. And I remember getting off the plane, and there on the runway was a line of flag-draped coffins ready to get back on the plane we were getting off of.
Yeah. All right. Now, do they send you to Bien Hoa first, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Took a bus right from Tan Son Nhut to Bien Hoa, and the processing starts. In fact, I got there, my first formation, they said, some guy drives up to the guy that's running it, he gives him a note. Any B positive blood type people here that would be willing to donate blood? Yeah, okay. So they get out of that formation and get in a little pickup truck, go about a quarter mile to, there's an aid station there, something. And the chopper comes in. You know, that was the first thing, you know, you're everywhere in the sky there's choppers, and that, you know, in the book I wrote that I said, you know, you're hearing that womp womp sound that used to just mean helicopter, but from that moment on would mean Vietnam when or wherever I heard it. So here in comes a chopper outside of that place, and off comes a bunch of wounded GIs, go in, some helping each other, some carrying, some walking, some on stretchers. And that's where we went to donate blood. And I always passed out if I donated blood, but they said, no, we got enough before I had to go.
Okay.
But that was my first few minutes in the country.
All right. Now, what will happen? What happens to you next?
I go back to waiting to get assigned to where I'm going to be. I figured should be somewhere right around here. I got pre-med, and I'm 7 months experience on an orthopedic ward in the States. Should be some big hospital around here somewhere. So no, not that. Okay, where are you going now? Where am I going? Dong Tam. What's that? That's a base camp for the 9th Division. Okay, that should be a big hospital there. So I go to Dong Tam. I go, is this it? No. Where am I going now? Bin Phuc. I said, what? Bin Phuc? And I had been.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Tan An had a provincial hospital, but no, you're not stopped here. You know, going to Bin Phuc. And that was the 2nd 47th unit in the 9th Division, and that was the last rung on the ladder. I'm a combat medic.
All right. Now that battalion, was that a mechanized battalion?
Yeah.
Did they rode around and?
Yeah, it was the only mechanized unit in the Delta, because you couldn't. You'd sink.
Right.
You're
going around in armored personnel carriers.
That's the theory.
Yep.
You know.
Okay.
But you would, and then you would get off, and then you would hump.
All right. Now, did you go? Was there a division base camp there? Was that what you were at, or did you then get assigned to a company and sent out in the field?
Dong Tam was the division base camp.
Yeah. But was there a battalion camp? I guess.
A battalion that was Bin Phuc.
Yeah.
It was not big.
Mm-hmm. All right. And physically, can you describe what that area looked like?
Yeah. It was rice paddies with intermittent jungle as far as the eye could see, flatter than a pancake. I remember thinking, if you got up on a 6-foot ladder and fired, you could shoot across the whole country. So that's what it looked like. And be a lot of walking around and water stuff.
Okay. Now, did you simply get assigned to that battalion aid station, or were you attached to a specific platoon, or what happened?
I went to the aid station, and that's say you're going to be 3rd Platoon Medic, B Company, and go over and meet some of your guys. And I went over there, and there's a guy from my neighborhood. There's a guy that worked with my brother, and I worked with his brother, and then there was this other guy, took me under his wing, says, come on, I'll introduce you to these people and stuff. So I had never met the guy that worked with my brother,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked with his brother. But we knew us by name, and there he was. He was with the mortar platoon, and the other guy I played, I think, Little League Baseball with, you know, so.
Okay. So it was a little bit of Old Home Week.
Yeah, and then the guy that was showing me to introduce me was Bill Word, and he introduced me to this one guy, and he said, you know, I love this. I love this. He said, my biggest fear growing up was that there wouldn't be a war going on when I was able to go. And this guy, you know, he was in our platoon, and he was our point man. Every day he took point. He wouldn't let nobody else do it. And he was really good. So.
All right. Okay, so you're joining them. Were they at the base camp at that point, or were they out in the field?
No, we were standing down
Okay.
at Bin Phuc.
Okay. And then how soon from there do you go out in the field?
Day or two.
Okay.
Couple, maybe, I'd say 2 days maybe.
All right. And then when you went out, were you going out on foot, or would you ride in the tracks first and then get out, or?
Yeah, number two, we would load up, what'd they call it? Some cowboy term. Mount up.
Mount up.
We'd
Yeah.
mount up. And we rode on top of the tracks. You didn't want to be in a track if it got blown up. And so you rode on top so you could be blown off. And so we headed out, we cleared the gate, lock and load, you know, got you around in your M16. And off we went to somewhere. I couldn't tell where the hell I was at any time in Vietnam. It was over that way or back this way. That was it. I had no clue. No clue. So.
Okay. And then what were the patrols like? I mean,
So this one here, first one was, we go to this wood line in the distance there. There were paddies, and we're gonna go assault that wood line, search and clear. But first, they have to soften it up. So I don't know what the hell any of this is, you know, I'm watching. And a Piper Cub comes and drops a white puff of smoke here, flies over to here, drops a puff of smoke here, and I thought, God, that ain't gonna do much damage. Then all of a sudden, out of the sky comes a F4, diving down, releases bombs, napalm, and they blow up, and the sound gets to us a little while after that, but we could feel the whole delta bob up and down, you know? So they made a few passes like that, and then when the smoke cleared, we opened up with everything we had on the area we were going to approach next, and that was it. It was softened up. We walked through there, 5 meters apart, you know.
now were the rice paddies full of water, or was it dry season, or?
Yeah, some of both. I think it was rainy season, and it's a soggy mess wherever we were. You try to put your foot where the guy that just passed put his foot, because there's booby traps, and that's basically what you did.
Okay. Now, did you stay off of the dikes on the paddies, or did you use them when that was appropriate?
Both.
Okay.
You know. I don't know exactly what mission it was, but one time we're doing this, walking through, and I'm exhausted, you know, and I see we go around this big mound of mud and then continue on that way. And when I got to it, I thought, I could save 10 steps if I go across that mound. So I started to go across that mound, and pretty soon I'm in up to my boots, up to my knees, up to my waist, and I can't get out. Meanwhile, you know, people would walk by and say, Doc, get out of there. I'm trying to get out of here. Another guy said, you know, damn FNG, you're slowing us down. So after a little while, nobody's going by anymore. I'm stuck in the mud up to here, and I'm trying to figure, I mean, here's a stream, and right across there is the wood line. And so I didn't know what the hell to do. So I tried to look like we planned this, you know. I assumed the position firing was scanning back across, back and forth. And I thought, you know, they're just getting their newest guy to, you know, shoot me. And all of a sudden, I don't know how he found this or what, but word plops a long log across the mud. Doc, pull yourself out on this. You got to get out of here. So he crawled out on the log and pulled me and I'm pulling. I get out of the mud from here down.
Mm-hmm.
We rejoin the column, and go on our merry way.
All right. Now, you're only with them for a few weeks before you get wounded. Are there other particular incidents from your time in the field that stand out in your memory?
Yeah, that must have been a subsequent mission when I got stuck. But one time, I think it was the first, I'm out there, there's 5 hooches over here. We're getting everybody, they're going to get everybody out of the hooches and stuff like this. And my platoon sergeant, Doc, come here, cover this guy. If he moves, kill him. I'm a doctor, it's my first mission. And the guy was a head taller than me, had a 17-strand beard down to here, and blue eyes. Yeah. And all I could feel off of this guy was hate. And he's watching us go into the hooches and stuff like this. I figured somebody's going to get blown up any second. And he looks over, and I took my rifle, put it on his chin, and shoved his face back over. And after they got nothing bad going here, the company commander and the platoon sergeant and the interpreter come over, take my guy away a little ways, start interrogating him and slapping him upside the head a few times and stuff. And then they come back and they say, okay, let's go. And I said, what about this guy? He's a VC. He said, no, he's a wounded ARVN and Army Republic of Vietnam. Mm. And I said, I can't, he wants to kill us. Somehow he's going to kill us. Doc, let it go, you know. So I let it go. But we had a blocking action a few days later. I get up to go out with him, and they said, Doc, you don't have to go. We don't need you for this. What do you mean? He says, no, it's a photo op. We'll be a blocking force. The ARVNs are going to sweep through, and it's just a photo op for the 6:30 news back home to show how the Vietnamese are taking over the war. So, okay, so I just went to sleep. And there's gunfire, and turns out that they had flushed out a few VC, and we killed them. And one guy comes up to me, Doc, remember that blue-eyed fucker from the other day? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were dead right about him. Hair standing up. And so that was the first thing with Vietnam. Who is the enemy? I couldn't, you know, I never knew. I mean, the only time I saw what I thought was an enemy was on that medcap, and a 12-year-old brain-damaged kid was headed towards our 50 caliber machine gun. And I didn't know what to make of it. I couldn't look around. I didn't want to lose him. They were in their wood line. And so who's the enemy was the big different thing in Vietnam. Right. You know, we always knew who the enemy was, World War from up to Korea, and then it was Vietnam. Now you don't even know who you're fighting.
Right. Okay. So going to go back there to the time that you spent with the combat unit. Did you actually have casualties to treat yourself?
Yeah, we're on another mission, and I'm back here, and at the front of the column, there's an explosion. The guy's yelling for the medic, and so I take off, and you know, it's a winding thing. I can go straight across and get there fast. So I go, and Gene Johnson was the senior medic. He was there first, and I came. We got this guy. He had stepped on some booby trap and blown up his foot, and we got him all, you know, fixed, not fixed, enough to call the chopper and get him out of here. And Johnson says to me, you know, this is my first wounding. Mm-hmm. He says, you did good, Doc. He said, but I would make one suggestion. He said, that land you ran across was a bunker complex. If they'd been in there, you'd be dead. So next time, follow the column. Don't blaze any new trails. And that's what I tried to do at the mud later, you know, blazing new trails. Couldn't get it through my head. But I figured my job was get there fast. You know, clear the airway, stop the bleeding, treat or prevent shock, get them the hell out. So that was the first one. The next one was night ambush. We were out in night ambush. I don't know, it's called mounted. It means we took the tracks. But then we dismounted. Was it dismounted or mounted? I don't know. What the hell? So we set up. One of the guys. Well, we get set up. It's getting dark. We're waiting for people to walk through our area. Like we're going to surprise them. The place stunk of diesel fuel and all the noise we made and shit. And so anyways, we bedded down. We had watch rotation set up, and all of a sudden you hear a poop like that. That's a mortar round. Somebody yells, incoming! Round lands 20 feet away. There's a guy next to the track that they were shooting at, sleeping on one of my litters, you know, and he's hit, and he's yelling. And I go over to him. He's sleeping under poncho liner, and I said, "Where are you hit?" He said, "My legs. I don't know if I got legs." And so I took the poncho liner back. It's dark. I can't see shit. And I ran my hand down both legs, and this one had was blood soaked and a piece of metal in it, right thigh. So I started. I said, "You got both legs. Move your feet." Yeah. Okay. You got a wound in your thigh. We got to stop the bleeding. So I start getting big dressings out, trying to wrap them up, tie them on tight, and then another round falls, same spot, and so I figured I got to get him out of here. So I went over, grabbed the end of the stretcher, and on my hands and knees I pulled the stretcher 2 feet. The guy was huge, 2 feet. So this isn't going to work. So I just went. He was wounded, more damage to him, you'd kill him. I'm not wounded. I covered him up with my body. Meanwhile, we opened up with everything in all directions. And I just waited for one more round to fall because that'd probably kill us both. And it didn't. So I got off and reinforced the dressing. It had bled through. And he said, "Doc, am I going to lose my leg?" And I said, you'll be roller skating down your driveway in 6 weeks. Okay, so they come, chopper comes, 2 grunts come and grab his litter, start taking away, and he says, "Doc." I said, "What?" My driveway's gravel. So, but that was my first solo dust off.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. Now, was the unit regularly taking casualties while you were with them, or were there just a few?
Yeah, there's always something, you know, but it wasn't mass. It was usually a guy. The only mass incident came, I don't know how many days after Bob, but we were out doing our thing, search and clear, in and out of chest deep water all day, exhausted. We get to a clearing, and the point man has found another booby trap, a grenade, and he's going to rig it with something to blow it up. So we bunched up. There's the first big mistake. You don't bunch up. We bunched up, and I'm standing there with one of the grunts, and we spot a piece of a knife and a mackerel can, and a piece of poncho over here. And the point man told us, you know, there'll always be something to mark the booby traps so they don't get killed. And one day it was mackerel cans, and then this day, you know, we're looking at this, and we called the platoon, the lieutenant, platoon leader, called him over, look at this stuff, and he says, yeah, they're in here all right. Then the next thing is we hear a metallic click, and Bill Word says, oh no, and boom, a big blast. And I felt like I was hitting the stomach with a baseball bat at a full swing, and couldn't breathe, and couldn't hear the explosion, just like blaring trumpets in my head. I couldn't hear anything. And sun, staring up at the sun, and I don't even know if I had my glasses. I couldn't, my rifle was gone, and I'm laying there, and after, I couldn't breathe, so as a Catholic, if you're going to die, you make a perfect act of contrition. Oh my God, I'm heartily sorry for having offended thee, and I detest all my sins because of thy just punishments, but most of all because they offended thee, my God. And I thought, wait a minute, I didn't do anything that bad. I didn't do anything to offend you for sure. So we do the imperfect act of contrition. I'm sorry for my sins because they'll make me burn in hell for eternity. I said, what? I said, look, I did the best I could. Do what you got to do. And shortly thereafter, I was able, it wasn't air leaving, I was able to take some breath in. And then the blaring started to drop a little bit, and I could hear people yelling. And I thought it was Vietnamese. I thought we were overrun, and I was hoping I would die before I'd have to watch myself be killed. And then I'm taking short breaths. I thought I had a belly wound. I had my hand over here, and if I moved it, I felt guts. And then I could start make out some of the voices yelling for medic, medic. And they were our guys, and we weren't being overrun. And then one guy comes over, takes one look at me, and says, oh shit, and runs off. I thought, what the what? So he went to get Gene Johnson, the senior medic. Johnson comes over and says, where are you hit? I said, I got a belly wound. If I move my hands, I feel guts. He said, don't move them. I cut my aid bags off and give everybody dressings and shit on any place they see blood. And then I said, what was it? He said, had to be a 105 round in a tree to get 7 guys. Oh shit. So then, things settled down a little bit. Two guys come get me, take me down to an area where the chopper's going to land. Other people must be around, but I can't look around. If I move, if I try to get up, I lose consciousness. And so I'm just laying there, and it's quiet. It's really quiet. And I hear Gene Johnson say, "Word's dying." And so then chopper comes, and we're loaded on. I think I'm on the bottom because then you'll be the first off. And helicopter takes off. We're headed somewhere, hospital. And I heard, it's a helicopter. It's noisy, but there was this vibrations that came and went. And then I was hearing the sound, every little bit, like a click. And I said, what the hell can I be hearing? What the hell could that be? And I look up, and Word is above me. and blood is dripping through his stretcher onto my chest. And that's the sound or the sensation was the drops. We get there, we get to Saigon, put us in a big ambulance, take us to 3rd Field Hospital. And a guy gets in and surveys the load and talks to 2 guys outside. This one's for you guys. And that was a word. And the bleeding, the dripping had stopped. He was dead. And so they took me into the triage area and at 3rd Field, rows of gurneys, overhead rows of fluorescent lights, and people all over the place. And they said, where are you hit? I said, I got a belly wound. If I move my hands, my guts are going to come out. And they said, well, you're at 3rd Field Hospital. It's okay, move your hands. I moved my hands, there's nothing there. That wound was in my chest, over here. And what was squishing down here wasn't guts, it was blood. And so they put in a chest tube and I passed out. And then I laid back down, the stretcher was full of blood. And then I told him, I said, I got something in my upper left thigh. And my pants were gone now, I guess. And they took a look. I said, and it said, the family jewels are intact. I said, good enough. And they put a catheter in, and I had another piece of metal in here, and then they sent me to ICU, and I'm in there, and there's a Vietnamese guy next to my bed. He was cleaning up. I screamed at him, you know. I didn't know we had him in here. How'd he get in here? You know. So, and then I finally fell asleep. I opened up my eyes. Stand next to me, Gary Smith from AIT. He said, I saw your name. I knew it couldn't be anybody but you. Mm-hmm. I said, Gary, how are you? He said, I'm fine. I've been here the whole tour, and I'm leaving in a couple of days. You know, so how's your friend Tom? He said, he's doing good. He said, well, if you need anything, just let me know. So then later, I think the same night, the guy across the aisle in the ICU is just bandages. He's just bandaged completely, except for mouth and maybe eyes. And he starts trying to get out of bed. And I tried, there's nobody around at the moment. I tried to yell for the nurse. I couldn't yell. I couldn't get enough, you know, area to yell. And finally, they heard and spotted him come running over. And, you know, Benjamin, get back in bed. Harris, get back in bed. And then he arrested and died. Mm-hmm. And the nurse comes over, you know, meanwhile, while they're working on him, I'm praying. Praying there'd be no more death today. And after that, the nurse come over to me. He says he was badly blown up. They worked on him all day, and there was no way they could save him. So they made the bed, got him out, made the bed. That was it.
All right, so you've made it here. You are now in the hospital. What's the rest of your recovery process like?
I spent 12 days at 3rd Field, which was a long time, because usually you get patched up, you either go to Camp Zama in Japan or back to the States. Mm-hmm. And but they took the chest tube out, blood reaccumulated in my chest. They put the chest tube back in. I was back in ICU. And so the guys from my unit that were wounded with me, we lost, the company commander, his shoulder was blown up and he went back to the States. He came and saw me. The lieutenant was pushing the grunt that was next to me who had leg injuries. They would come and see me every day. And then they went somewhere. And then platoon sergeant, I see him one day. Hey, how you doing? What happened? We got ambushed. Blew up my elbow. And there's another guy was here too. He's around here. So saw them, and the other guy he was talking about comes in to see me, and I says, "Hey, well, what happened to you?" And he turns around, lifts up his pajama top, and across his back, here's the middle of the spine, here's the muscles. There's a furrow across his back. A machine gun round went right across, missed his spine, and so so they were coming through, and then there was a guy with after I got out of the ICU the second time, I'm in a big gymnasium. This place used to be a school, I'm sure, and then this was the gymnasium. There's all beds in there, and I had walked past this guy with white patches on his big guy. I called him Big Bear, and he used to deactivate booby traps and stuff like this. And when one blew up, he was blind, and I walked by him. And I said, "Hey, Big Bear, how you doing?" "Hey, okay." And then, "You need anything? What time is it?" I said, 4 o'clock. He said, "AM or PM?" That crushed me. That I had to make him ask me whether it was day or night. So, anyways, that's there. Then I was about to leave in a day or so, and there were sirens. Whenever people were brought into the triage area in ambulances, sirens all day long, off and on. They'd stop. Okay. Well, this time they didn't stop, and I thought, what the hell is going on? So I was ambulatory. I walked down to the triage area, and one of the weapons they had were called sapper teams, and they threw satchel charges into things. And today at in Saigon, a busy street, school bus stopped. They opened up the back, threw satchel charges, and blew up all the kids. And they were now in the triage area. And I'm standing from the walkway watching. And it was awful. The only thing that was good about it was the medical personnel, what they were doing. Bam, 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 bam. Hardly anything said. I didn't hear many words. The kids, some of them were dead, some were dying, and I decided that, if I make it out, I'm going to go back to school, become a doctor, because, you got to have them. And it's a noble thing you're trying to do. That doesn't matter whose side you're on here or anything. If these guys aren't there, if somebody wasn't there for me, I'm dead. So But that was the worst moment at Third Field. And then the best moment at Third Field, I'm back in my bed and sleeping. A voice next to me says, well, first I got to tell you this. When Tom and I were growing up, people would say, what are you going to do for a living? I said, we're not going to work. There was a television show on TV back in the late 50s, early 60s called The Millionaire. And it started off, this guy goes in the office of this fabulously wealthy donor named John Beresford Tipton that you never saw. His back was always to us. But Michael Anthony was this messenger boy. Michael would come in, and John Beresford Tipton would give him a check for $1 million to give to some people anonymously, some person that he had selected. And Michael Anthony would take the check and go give that person the check. They'd be nuts, and I mean, what the hell? No, it's real. And the show would be for a half hour. It would change their lives. So Tom and I were not going to work. We were going to wait for Michael Anthony to bring the check. So I'm in bed. Somebody says, would you like a visitor? I open my eyes. There's Michael Anthony. Yeah, he was there with the USO. Marvin Miller was the actor that played that role. And I instantly choked up. I couldn't talk. He says, I come back later. He says, I said, no, give me a second. And I told him about me and Tom and our thing. And he gave me a check for $1 million worth of good luck on the International Bank of Goodwill. I said, could you do one for Tom? Yep. And he gives me those. And so I still have that check hanging in my office, and there's numbers on it, and I scrambled them to make my Mega Millions numbers. So I always try to have a live Mega Millions ticket in my wallet with those numbers on it, because I figure, what are the chances of that, what just happened, happening? Probably less than the chances of me winning the lottery, Mega Millions. So anyway, that was the great moment. Mm-hmm. So
okay, so you get out of the hospital. Now what happens?
Go to 6th Convalescent Center in Cameron Bay, and Bob's there. The guy dusted off with the leg. Mm-hmm. He's there, getting better. He'll be leaving in a week or so. So we palled around, and but I started to have head trouble there. I had first Life magazine published had an issue with, on the cover, the pictures, the basic training pictures of 248 guys that were killed in Vietnam in a certain week, and it just happened to be the week I was wounded. And I'm looking at these pictures, and I'm thinking, I'm just looking at them, and I'm beginning to think I'm seeing something in them that says not only they're dead, but in the pictures looked like you could tell they were going to be dead. And it was terrible. And I had had an experience in the field where, I don't know what operation this or that, but I'm getting up. I get up in the morning and I'm folding up my poncho liner. And I had a thought that was, I thought somebody said it. I turned around to look. This is the last time you're going to be folding up this poncho liner. But it was just a thought. And later that day is when I got blown up. So now I'm seeing impending death in the faces of guys' pictures, basic training. And then Word and Harris weren't in there. I thought, what is this? You know, they died that week. Weren't we counting them, or do we not? Was all the bullshit we hear about our casualties not true? So anyways, that was that. And then there was another thing. I got, I'm in the library, and I'm reading Stars and Stripes, the Army magazine, and they publish once a week the casualties, those killed in action in the week, in a certain week. And I'm reading, and here's, you know, Freeman Robert Spec 4, Ypsilanti, Michigan, KIA. And he's a guy from the dorm. I didn't know he was in the Army. I didn't know he was here. And he was just a fun guy that we used to do crazy shit in the dorm with and stuff. And now I'm trying to remember Freeman, and it was like, you know, your memories are like movies. Well, the tape would stop, the film would stop. I couldn't keep a memory going on him. And then last but not least, I got pictures from home from the New Jersey thing before Fort Dix. There's pictures, and everybody in the pictures except me is a developed picture, and I'm a negative, like you saw in Back to the Future, you know, later,
yeah,
with Michael Fox.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it. I'm crazy. And so I went to see the chaplain, and he was amazing. He had an apartment office next to some of the barracks that we were in. And he said, you know, you just had a crash course in war, and you'll have thoughts like that all the time, and nothing will happen after them, but sometimes it will. It's not one cause the other, you know. So, you know, next time when you have one and it doesn't materialize, you can feel better about it, but it's pretty normal what you're describing, don't worry. So, and I started to feel better. And, you know, Cameron Bay was a safe place. So I left, and 2 days after I left to go back to my unit, sappers came up from the South China Sea, across the beach to the barracks, threw satchel charges in the ward on each side of mine, wounded 91 wounded people and killed 2 or 4. So there was not a safe place in Vietnam, you know.
All right. Now, at this point, once you leave Cam Ranh Bay, where do you go?
Back to Ben Phuc.
Okay.
Yeah. I get back there, they didn't even recognize. I grew a mustache. I lost a ton of weight, and can I help you? The first sergeant, you know. I said, Doc Czop. I said, you getting a lot of visitors through here these days? Oh no, we thought you were dead. We thought you went back to the States. We sent all your shit home and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, I'll give you an easy job. That was the medcaps program. Go around, take a box of supplies, go to the villages and treat Vietnamese with minor conditions and stuff. And that was a good idea. I thought it was a great idea. Win the hearts of the mind of the people. You know, medical civic action program. The only problem was we were out looking for the enemy. It's basically what we were. And if they had intelligence they had an intelligence guy with us. There was 4 of us. Track driver. I was the medic. We had an interpreter. And we had this guy from an E6 from the intelligence section was in charge. And if we could get a grunt, he'd be on the machine gun. If we couldn't get a grunt, I would double as machine gunner and medic, which was interesting. So we got, if they knew that we were in an area that was, we better have some help, they'd send 2 tracks, 2 squads of grunts with us. And, you know, we shot our way out of a few situations, and And then when we had this thing with the kid and going to the track, after that I came back and went to see the lieutenant, was now the company commander, the guy that blown up with me. I said, I got to ask you a favor. He said, name it, Doc. I said, I want to go back online with the company. I said, I'm running around. I feel more comfortable with 90 guys out there than 4. And he says, you're right. They're just using you for bait. And I don't like it. And I told him, you can come back with the company. I'll put you with mortar platoon. You won't have to hump. I said, okay, great. Thank you. So that was supposed to happen then the next day or so. The next day, I got orders for Hawaii. I was getting pulled out with the first 25,000 drop in the bucket that was leaving, and I was one of them.
Okay. Now let's back up a little bit. You mentioned the story about the boy in the track and so forth, and you mentioned that kind of in passing earlier. You told me a fuller version of that story before we started the interview. So just talk us through that episode. You're on a medcap, you go to a particular place, and what happens?
Well, they on the bullhorn, anybody needs medical attention. Out comes Grandpa with the kid. His foot's all wrapped up in bandages, and so I go to take care of him. The rest of the team goes off with Grandpa into the wood line. He's going to show them where weapons and rice are stashed. And so I peeled off all this towels and shit off this kid's foot, and he had stepped in a punji stake, bamboo sharpened thing dipped in feces to cause infection, and his foot was badly infected. And so I got to get some tools from the track. And I turn around and go to the track, and there's that kid dashing to the track. And the 50 caliber machine gun was all I could think was going to happen. And I, don't lie, stop, halt. And he did. And I said, Lade, come here. He didn't. I motioned him away from the track with the rifle. He didn't move. I didn't know where he came from. Was he alone? Was there others around? I'm not going to look around. And so raised the rifle, sighted on, was pulling the trigger when they came out. Doc, stop, no. Don't shoot. It's the chief's grandson. He's brain damaged. They're running up. And, okay. So he said, we got to get out of here. They got weapons they'll be back for, and we got to get out of here. So we did, and we sent somebody to come and get the kid later, take him in.
Now, the kid, did you find out why he was going to the track?
Yeah. They told me, they came out, Grandpa had told them, he said, he's just looking for, what the hell?
Peanut butter?
Peanut butter from the sea rations. Other GIs had given him peanut butter, so he's going to the track to get peanut butter. And I just was sick about it.
Okay, and so you get back now to the base, and what happens then? What's going on when you get back?
Neil Armstrong is hopping around on the moon. He's on TV. Everybody's watching. Like, what a great thing this is. Well, it should have been. When I heard about it in 1960 or 1 or 2, when Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, I thought that's going to be really something when it happens. And it happened. But it wasn't exciting to me anymore. I mean, I didn't give a shit. The moon, you wanna test yourself out, come on down here, So anyway, and that's when I walked out, hung up my rifle, and our dog, Band-Aid, come up and told me what a great human being I actually am. I tried to, the first time I met Band-Aid was my first night staying in the aid station after getting to Ben Phuc. And there were cages, 3 or 4 cages in the aid station with a number on them. And 74, 22, 16. I said, what's these? He said, what are those traps? And he says, yeah, they're rat traps. I said, what's the number? He said, that's the number of rats caught in that trap in this rainy season. So I'm sleeping on the floor in there, and something comes walking up, click, 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 sniffs my face, and I just hit it with a full swing, and it ran off. I thought it was a rat that was going to carry me off, eat me later. And in the morning, everybody said, where's Band-Aid? And Band-Aid was hiding. He came out, you know, and I said, oh, I had no idea. I slugged him last night. So, but
the Band-Aid forgave you.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. So now, okay, you get orders for Hawaii. Okay, so how
Well, I had 3 weeks or something. I had to hook up with the 9th Aviation Battalion in Dong Tam, which was deactivating for reassignment in Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. So we did that.
Now, was that a conventional base on land? Because part of that base was a floating base. But were you just on land?
Dong Tam?
Yeah.
No, it was nothing floating about this. There was a section down there where the Riverines were. That probably was floaty. And they asked if I wanted to be in that or the mechanized unit. And I saw all these guys drying their socks and their feet up in the air. I think I'll go with the mechanized unit, so thank you. Yep, so they're, no, it was a big operation. And, you know, sirens would go off when, you know, a round would get lobbed in from somewhere. And it was probably a square couple of miles, that base. And so it wasn't like it was scary, but you had to go to the bunker, so on. So.
Okay. Now, did you have much actual work to do while you were there, or were you just...
Yeah, we did sick call, which was basically treating gonorrhea. And guy would come in, get 2.4 million units in this buttock of penicillin, 2.4 million of that. We take the thing that held the syringe, take the syringe out, throw it, stick it in the door, and by the end of the day, you know, there are 15, 20 of those things in there. That was our main thing. And then we had to stay for sick call in case anybody got sick, and they tried to shut us down early. And then then the captain got the trots, and I said, see, we better stay open a little longer. So we stayed open till the last minute, and then got out.
All right. And then what's the flight back like?
We got, let's see, a Chinook come and got us at 9th Aviation Battalion, and we got loaded into that. That took us to Tonsanute, and I was still scared shitless because I took care of a guy at Fort Knox that had a foot blown up that was sitting on the runway waiting to get on the plane to leave, and a round came in and wrecked him. And so that wasn't safe. Then we got on a military thing, big plane. We sat all the way across in rows. And as soon as we got off the ground, everybody started cheering, not me. I wanted to get out of mortar and RPG range before. And then I cheered. And yeah.
Okay. And then where did that take you?
To Oahu. I don't know whose airport. Hickman. No, that was in Fort Sam. Some base.
There's a Hickam field in Hawaii.
Okay, Hickam. Yeah, then might have been that. But
okay, so it was just a straight flight from Vietnam to Hawaii. Or did you have to stop somewhere to refuel?
Let's see. I don't remember if we stopped. We gassed up a couple places on the way
Okay, yeah.
to Vietnam, but I don't remember. I remember getting out at Wake Island on the way. I said, what the hell? Is this where they fought that battle?
Yeah.
For this? For a gas station? So anyway,
Okay,
I
so
don't remember.
You don't remember that? Okay. So then, but you get Hawaii, all right,
Yeah.
and then you'll go on from there.
Then we were assigned to the 25th, 1 Brigade of the 25th Infantry. We were on hold. We had the 25,000, we had people from the pullout. We had an activated National Guard unit from Maui, and we had people that were on their way to Vietnam, and we were all there and waiting for the next move. And the guy that was in charge of the aid station at Dong Tam, 9th Aviation Battalion, he and I palled around together at Schofield Barracks. We would get up in the morning and go to the company and tell them we had to work at the battalion. And we'd go to the battalion, tell them we had to work at the company. Then we'd go to this little store and buy yogurt, guava nectar, and across the street was a baseball field with an enclosed grandstand. We'd go up there and sack out.
So how long did that work?
Not long. So I had 3 months left to serve. So Roy, the guy that came with me from the aid station, he got reassigned to some unit there, and I got a 30-day leave after having been in the combat zone. I was a little overdrawn on leave time, and I had to pay for, I don't know, so many days. I said, how about I just write you a check for 3 months and we call it a experience. No, you have to come back. So I went home, and that was I don't remember if Tom was where he was then, but he was living in Kalamazoo, and so I had a house and stuff, going to Western, so on. So.
All right, so you get to catch up with him, and then you go back to Hawaii again to finish out the time in service, and then you're still, I believe you're discharged before your full 2 years are up, right?
Yeah. I could get an early out if I was accepted to college.
Okay.
So I actually filled out the paperwork for that in the bunker at Dong Tam, and got accepted to Wayne State. My brother, I gave him power of attorney. He registered me, and when I would get out, I would got my early out and started back at school 1 day after my discharge.
All right. Okay. And so you complete the degree at that point? So you graduate, or what?
Schofield Barracks was a little more complicated.
Okay. Let's go back there then.
I was having big trouble there. You know, I had played for all the marbles, and my belt buckle, how shiny it was, or my boots, I really wasn't, you know, motivated to win any trophies for that shit. And so I had trouble. And I had been a Spec 4 within 7-8 months in the service, and I was going to be a Spec 5 when I got to Vietnam. I got blown up. When I came back, promotions were frozen, and so I had to deal with the platoon sergeant at Schofield Barracks, and he says, I want to see what you do around here first. I said, what the hell are you talking about? It's what I did over there was what mattered. We'll see. So anyways, there was that bullshit. Then one day we had our M14s, because they were easier. They look better in parades. And we're practicing for a parade. We come back, and a guy, Rodriguez or something, gives the platoon sergeant a profile. You know, he says, I can't do this. I can't hold this thing this long and stuff like this. And he says, and the sergeant says, well, if you guys are going to start pulling these profiles around here, things are going to get tough. And I just lost it. You know, I said, look at his arm. It was a jagged scar from shoulder to hand. He'd hit with a machine gun. And I said, he didn't get that shine in his boots like you know. He said, and I just let him have it. And so we went to the orderly room and to see the company commander. Well, I was playing basketball on the company team, and we had just won the company championship. We had just won the battalion championship, and we were ready to start brigade competition. And we go down and see the CO, who's the coach. So he let me off, you know, he says, you know, he talks the usual bullshit in front of the other guy and sends him out. He says, you know, you're short, you get your early out coming. If you want to spend the rest of your time, unless you want to spend the rest of your time in the stockade here, you better watch your step, you know. And that was nice, because I was back in. Another sergeant dragged me in. I broke my glasses in a game that night before, went right to the optometry clinic, get them fixed or replaced. Yep. And I'm in this parade practicing with these wire-rimmed sunglasses that I had brought from civilian days. And the sergeant walks up to me and says, get them shades off. I said, I can't, Sergeant. They're prescription. I can't see good enough without them. He says, I don't give a shit. Take them shades off. I said, I can't do it. I broke my glasses last night. I went to the thing. And he says, I'm giving you a direct lawful order to take them shades off. Are you refusing it? And I says, yeah. Down to the company commander, coach, and he was there. He was coach. He said he knew but things were getting dicey. So anyway, I got my early out, and the rest is history.
All right. So you went on and you actually became a doctor ultimately? Did that?
Yeah. I started school the next day, 1 day late, pre-med, and was enjoying learning for learning's sake. I liked the shit my brother signed me up for. I had a 500 level genetics course that I really didn't need, but I enjoyed it. Great teacher. And psychology of adjustment, wow, there was a godsend. And then I forget what the other real science was. But anyways, it was all good. And you know, before, if I didn't succeed, I would be drafted. Now, what are they going to do? Are they send me to Vietnam? I've already been. So it was enjoyable. Then I went to a basketball game. Catholic Central was playing at Chrysler Arena, some regional thing. And Frank Tanana was on the basketball team, the pitcher. And Greg Marks, All-American from Notre Dame football guy. And in the stands, I run into a classmate from high school, Tim. I say, hey, how you doing? Good, how are you? What are you up to? I'm looking for an apartment. So am I. So we got an apartment together. I met his little sister. 2 years later, we got married. And Tom was my best man in a tuxedo and his wheelchair. Tim was a groomsman, and my brother was the other groomsman. And that wedding was the greatest moment of my life.
All right. Okay. Now, and then you went on from there to medical school eventually? Okay. Where did you go to med school?
Michigan State.
Okay. All right. And then how did you wind up out here?
Love. The first marriage lasted 13 years, and you know, after Vietnam, you know, we didn't have PTSD in those days. We just come home effed up, if we did.
Yeah.
And my problem was, well, first off, I volunteered for the draft, volunteered to go to Vietnam, volunteered to stay there after the chest wound. And so I had asked for everything that happened to me. Then others had died. Here's my best friend with a bad wound, who was making the most of his life and putting it back together as best he could. So how could I bitch about my experiences in Vietnam? I asked for it. Here's my best friend, way worse. So I just kept my mouth shut, but I was bugged. And you know, there was the worst thing was that after or while I was at Schofield Barracks, I had a roommate in a cubicle that was pulled out of the 9th, and we were friends. And he had 2.5 years left to serve, and he couldn't stand the bullshit of Schofield Barracks any better than me. He asked to go back to Vietnam. They sent him. I was watching the news. I sent him a couple letters. We exchanged a couple letters, and then I'm watching news one night. It's his unit, and they're in trouble. I never got any more letters. I didn't know if he was alive or dead. So the two things that bothered me most after Vietnam were I wanted to send a letter, make a contact with Bill Ward's family, and send them a letter. Somebody in Tom's unit had sent his family. They'd witnessed what happened to Tom, and sent them a letter that was tremendously helpful. Because all we got was he's quadriplegic, he's paralyzed, and in Walter Reed. So I wanted to make a contact with his family so I could send them a letter, say how he had helped me and that he was a good soldier and so on. And then I wanted to find out if Moyer was dead or alive. So all during college, medical school, I would go try to find what I could so I could send a letter and this stuff, and it never panned out. So, but it was terrible, you know. I felt awful, and it kept happening, and I got some stuff that can help me here from then, because the dates were a little confused, and when I went through this to get ready for being here, I went back and got everything all lined up right. And if I can refer to that, I think it's here. Minfook. So anyways, that would, I had the usual stuff, you know, noises, gunfire, backfires. I slept with one leg out of the covers in bed, because that's how I slept with my poncho liner in the field, because if somebody was going to come and cut my throat, I didn't want to get tangled up in this poncho liner. And so in those days, it was almost impossible to make contact with people in the service with minimal information I had. But I tried over and over. I felt I had to do it for them, but it was me that was suffering with this, not them, and also my wife and later my children. And it only got worse over time. So it was March 1975. I graduated from Wayne State with a Bachelor of Science degree with distinction in psychology, and from Michigan State as a Doctor of Medicine. A 3-year residency in family practice would follow. Before it ended, Maureen and I would become parents of Kathleen Grace. I opened my office July 10th, 1978. By the end of that August, Megan Marie was born. And our life, you want me to keep going with this point from here?
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, particularly if it relates to just sort of how all of your
coming.
PTSD kind of affects all of this stuff.
It is coming.
Yeah.
Our life was perfect. Things had not gone as well for America over those years. In 1971, the Pentagon Papers told the truth about our involvement in Vietnam. In 1973, Nixon nearly bombed Vietnam off the map. By the way, the N-word for me, Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
But we had, in 1968, Nixon had been elected in part for his secret plan to end the war in Vietnam within 3 months, but we had to elect him first. There were 14,676 American soldiers killed after that. Then the Watergate saga began. In the midst of it, Vice President Spiro Agnew had to resign after pleading no contest to bribery and tax evasion charges. Nixon desperately struggled to lie his way out of everything he had done, right up to his impeachment and resignation. In 1975, the Republic of Vietnam would cease to exist. I had a difficult time watching our institutions of government disintegrating, but I was hopeful that the seeming few trying to preserve them would prevail. So I thought it would be a good idea for me to get more involved with government. I had some positive encounters with some good people in the state government. I thought it'd be a good thing to get more involved. I played recreation basketball Tuesday nights with Kevin. He worked at Michigan State Medical Society. I got onto the legislative committee of the County Medical Society, and we would meet once a month at a local restaurant with legislators to give them our medical point of view on issues concerning medicine. Debbie Stabenow was a newly elected member of the House. She was there. Dave Hollister was another House member, later mayor and all this stuff. And Bill Cederberg was a new member from the Michigan Senate. And they were impressive human beings, drawn to politics in the same time period that I had become so turned off and cynical. Yeah, it was becoming obvious to me that in 10 years, politics and the laws of economics would probably influence patterns of and accessibility to healthcare more than principles of disease, therapeutics, or common sense. By staying involved to some extent in the decision making, that trend could be modified. Great. If not, I'd have time to get a new job. So okay, we're getting close to the PTSD that didn't exist back in those days. I was making progress. Memorial Day 1979 was on May 28th, the day that I'd been blown up. Somebody, probably Kevin, put a reporter from the Lansing State Journal in touch with me, and they asked if they could do a story on me, and I was happy to oblige, and they ran it on the front page. And I was grateful for the opportunity. Then this is where it starts to hit the fan. In October 1980, I attended a leadership conference put on by the Michigan State Medical Society, and the speakers were national experts in medicine, economics, and legislation. There were about 300 doctors from across the state in attendance. The final speaker of the day was being introduced. Ladies and gentlemen, we're pleased to have with us today as a guest of the Michigan State Medical Society, United States Senator Carl Levin, Democrat from Michigan, who will be speaking to us about issues in medicine at the national level. Senator Levin is a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and that was the last word I heard. Suddenly I was back on the ground in Vietnam, hearing people screaming and Gene Johnson say, "Words dying." It was a clear and terrifying vision, and for a few endless moments I experienced it all over again, the pain, the screaming, and the chaos. I wasn't remembering, I was reliving. I started writing on the back of the program to tell Levin about Word and Moyer and how I'd been trying for 10 years to make contact and why. By the time I finished writing, he was no longer speaking, the room was emptying. I went up to him and gave him a note after he finished talking to a few people. And when I did, I completely broke down. He led me to a chair and read what I had written. As I slowly got it together, he said some words of consolation and told me he would try to help. It took me a few days to recover from what I experienced. That was the first. Mm-hmm. That was the first. So what happened at the conference, that took me by complete surprise. I thought I was over Vietnam to whatever extent I was going to be. I decided I better try to talk it out. My next door neighbor was an excellent history prof at Michigan State. He was finishing up a section on the Vietnam War, and he asked me if I would come and talk to his class. And I accepted, but being back on campus in a classroom was harder than I thought it would be. One of the biggest fears of many Vietnam veterans was that the government might someday make the same mistake again. And they were in the progress of doing exactly that. Now our national security was being put on in a hot, heavily foliated Central American country, Nicaragua, in a civil war fought in tropical heat between the Contras and the Sandinistas, who spoke a language we didn't. The effort to support the Contras was one component of the Reagan Doctrine, which called for providing military support to movements opposing Soviet-supported communist governments. I thought, here we go again. So my closing message to the students was, you better form an opinion on this Nicaragua thing pretty quick, even if it might not seem like much to you now, and you think you're too busy to pay much attention to it, because when it drags your ass out of this room and you're trying to tell the good guys from the bad guys while your friends are getting blown apart, it'll be too late. That was round 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. Round 3, it was in the fall of 1981. I was given a ticket to a $100 a plate Republican fundraiser on the estate of publisher John McGough in Williamston, Michigan. The guest of honor was Gerald R. Ford. I was driving home from a bagel place in East Lansing on a Sunday morning with the radio on when Ford announced he was giving Nixon a pardon. I bounced the left front tire off the curb and nearly lost control. I couldn't believe my ears. I told Kevin I best not go, and I told him about this obscene fantasy I had about what Nixon did to Ford to get pardoned. And Kevin said, now's your chance to ask him in person. So I went. Valets parked 500 cars, including my Ford Fiesta, out of sight somewhere on the estate. Nearby was a Huey chopper with a fancy paint job that he had flown in on. After signing the guest registry, Maureen and I found a place to stand outside the guest house adjacent to the main residence. The glass door slid open, and Gerald and Betty walked past not 5 feet from us. "Good to see you," he nodded to us. Shortly after, we were ushered into a huge white tent where 500 guests in obviously expensive clothes sipped champagne while seated around large round tables. Strolling violinists roamed around them. After an invocation by a Republican cleric, we were all served a filet mignon dinner, hot. After several prominent state office holders spoke, it was Ford's turn to update us on golf with Bob Hope, the great things in store for the Republican Party, thanks to nice folks like us. We clapped, and the party began breaking up. I just sat there. The Republican Party had a bad track record in my life. Gerald Ford could have righted many of those wrongs, but instead he chose to give Nixon a free pass. I had nothing in common with anyone here, and I didn't want to. I served this country by putting my life on the line for what I believed it represents, not to become one of these people using wealth to gain political influence and power. I shouldn't have come. At least I shouldn't have signed the guest registry. Next round was 1982. I was seeing patients, running behind, stopped for lunch, looked at my mail. Among bills, a notice I was behind at the hospital's medical records department and a renewal of a bank note appeared a letter from the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. It started, "Dear friend," and ended basically with "make check payable to." Mm-hmm. In between was a survey on how I felt about 9 policy issues. I left it on my desk and read it a few more times the next couple days. On September 1st, 1982, I had to respond. Here's the response. Dear Mr. Reagan, I received your letter of July 13th, 1982. Unfortunately, I was unable to react to the National Legislative Action Survey before the deadline of August 23rd, 1982. Still, the survey caused me a great deal of concern. I was not able to answer a single one of the 9 questions in it. The question requesting my contribution was much more clearly understood, however. In 1969, I began to have the first inklings of what it's like to pay for the maintenance of the ideals and institution known as the United States of America. Initially, I paid through military service, including combat in Vietnam. The day after my discharge from the service, I returned to school and completed my final 2 years of college and then medical school. After 3 years in residency, I went into practice, and since then I've been acquainted with a second form of payment, taxes. With both, the price has been very high. I pay the taxes because I have spent time in a country where the citizens weren't willing to, and that country no longer exists as a result. In 1968, I was in Washington, D.C. to visit my best friend on the neurosurgical unit at Walter Reed Army Hospital, where he was being treated after being rendered quadriplegic in combat in Vietnam. I was so bitter about the government of this country that I refused to even look at any of the national monuments that happened to be on my way from the airport to the hospital. So you see, when I received your letter, which starts with "Dear friend," and ends in essence with "make check payable to," when you don't know me from Adam, a great deal of feelings were stirred up. I've got scars, both literal and figurative, from the government of the United States. They're healing, but it's taking a long time, and the healing is incomplete. I've got ignorance of the system, and I'm supporting that system with my taxes. I'd like to know more about it, and I'd like to know firsthand. That's the way I found out about Vietnam. And I think I'd like to find out America in the same fashion. What I'd like you to do is simply this. I'd like to drop by your place for a few days, get your answers to the questions on the survey, have it arranged so that I could meet with some Democratic opposition to get his or her answers, and after that I'll give you a crack at my wallet. I sincerely mean everything I'm saying in this letter. I never would have written it had you not written to me first. I have the utmost respect for you as a human being. You've taken on successively greater responsibilities and handled them in a fashion that you believe best, and overall you've done well. I'm not so sure what I feel for the office of President of the United States as an institution. This is left over from war wounds for which the Purple Heart is not given. I eagerly await your reply. So I got a reply. It said, thanks for your interest. Inflation is down. Employment is up. And thanks for your interest. On November 1st, 1982, I sent a copy of my original letter back to President Reagan with a copy of the response I received. I asked, if you think that in any way, shape, or form what I received represents a response to the issues I raised, I'd like to know how. After receiving no response, tried another approach. At the weekly meeting of my office staff, I told them I want us to form an organization. They were a little confused, but I reassured them. Okay, now that we're an organization, I just want us to think about donating $100,000 to the re-election of Ronald Reagan. Don't worry, just think that thought for a moment. Okay, meeting adjourned. Dear President Reagan, I'm a member of an organization contemplating a $100,000 donation to your re-election. Would you please furnish me with further details on how to proceed with implementation? On April 18th, 1983, I received a detailed 2-page response for one of 2 deputy counsels of the Republican National Committee on how to proceed and a phone number if I had any additional questions. After long and painful deliberation, I decided what I needed to do. I thought the president needed to know what government looks and feels like from down here. And if we're going to be buddies, I thought it'd be a good idea for him to get to know some of my other friends too. So I started writing the president and some of my other friends. Mm-hmm. The back cover, Dear Ron, I'm not going to tell you the check's in the mail. It's not, and it won't be. Please think of this book as a contribution to the health and vitality of the American political system. Thanks for providing the stimulus. By the way, if you could see your way to sending a few bucks to help with publication costs, no amount is too small, you know I'd appreciate it. Your friend, Rich. P.S. My love to Nancy and the kids. So that's when, I didn't think I needed $100,000 to get the attention of any elected official in this country, even the President of the United States. So
you move toward winding up here, kind of. So basically, so you were in this period now, you're kind of struggling with what would later get identified as PTSD. And that affected your first marriage. That was the...
Yeah, I wrote this book. I was having trouble ending it. And I was consumed with the task. It took time away from everything, especially my family. I questioned if it was worth all the effort and expense. I was having trouble coming up with an appropriate ending. I knew where I had to go to figure out, and that was the Vietnam Memorial. And that was a difficult experience. I would self-publish the book shortly after Maureen and I separated, and we started seeing a good psychologist. That's the first. I can tell you about that. It's in this.
Okay.
Okay. We're seeing this guy for marriage counseling. I really think it would be more productive to change our approach from this counseling from conjoined to individual for at least a little while. We'd been meeting with a good psychologist who came highly recommended. I talked with him a couple of times at nurse stations in the hospital over the years and enjoyed those informal contacts. Would you be agreeable to that? I would be, Maureen answered. That sounds like a good idea to me too. Good. Then Rich, you and I will be meeting together for the immediate future. I thought you meant you and Janine. I mean you and Maureen. No, Rich. You have had some experiences that are your own, but they strongly influence your dealings with others. I think that is where the emphasis needs to be for now. I know I have some issues, but I don't think they are the primary problem in this relationship, I said. And that's exactly where you and I will start next time, he answered. I thought we were on the wrong track, but I'd listen and give it a try. So next time, Rich, what's your understanding of post-traumatic stress disorder? He asked after a couple sessions. That's what Vietnam veterans who sit around drinking and smoking themselves to death, while telling the same war stories to each other have. I don't have that. That may be true in some extreme cases, but obviously not in yours, he answered. I don't think I have that. Can you tell me why not? I was only there a short time. I was a medic. My job was to help. Bad things happened to me, but others had it much worse or even died. I came home, finished college, went to medical school, and now I'm a practicing doctor. I'm trying to write a book because I think the government of this country is selling out to the highest bidder and leading us into another bad war. Those are positive and helpful things to a certain degree, but you started college the day after your discharge from the service. You've not taken more than a week off since, and you write between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. I don't want to get hung up in semantics or terminology, but there's something wrong with this picture. I totally agree, I said, but the problem is not out there. It's inside you, and until you stop denying that exists, you won't solve it, no matter how many hours you work or how many pages you write. The world already knows that war is a bad thing. You have to stop thinking about what it did to Bill, Tom, or anybody else, and focus on understanding what it did and what you are still letting it do to you, and how that affects your relationships with people in your life now. I'd never thought of the problem from that perspective. I volunteered for the draft to go to Vietnam and to stay after I was wounded. I asked for everything that happened to me, and I promised myself I would never let Vietnam be the excuse for anything in my life, good, bad, or indifferent. And in the process, you set yourself to perpetuating a pattern of behavior and outcomes that has not served your best interest. It's time you rethink your position. I know you're an excellent physician, but no matter how good you are or how much better you may become, you won't be able to accomplish what I see you trying to do. And what's that? You can't raise the dead. I can't accept the premise that something went wrong with me in Vietnam. What went wrong was our country's old script for war. Vietnam should have been the end of bad policy, killing good soldiers. But I don't think it was. 241 U.S. Marines were recently blown up in their beds in a barracks in Lebanon by 2 pickup trucks loaded with explosives. And now Reagan is ready to involve us in a civil war in Nicaragua. And you think I have a problem because shit like that keeps me having nightmares? Yes, I do. So anyways, the divorce ended after our 13-year marriage was final April 18th, 1986.
All right. Now, how long did it take him to convince you that you had an issue to actually deal with?
I didn't. In 1999, I was 12 years into a good marriage again. And but there were issues. You know, I still had the same shit going on, but we moved out to Charlotte to a 55-acre farm, and it was a beautiful place. It was everything I ever wanted in a place to live, and I loved it. But here's the next bombshell that happened. I was mowing the grass and stuff, and as I neared the house, my wife's name was Meredy. I called her Ellen in this book. Came down the hill with a cordless phone in her hand and a look of concern on her face. I was on vacation. I had good coverage. Patients and friends to whom I had given my unlisted home number possessed it with the understanding that rarely I might be reachable but unavailable. This was one of those rare moments. I shut down the mower when I reached her. It's Lynn from the office. She said she's sorry, but she needs to talk to you right away. She sounds upset. I was sure this could be handled in a few seconds. Hi, Lynn, what's up? Lynn had been replaced on the other end of the line. This is Agent Vanderland of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are in your office seizing charts. You need to come in here. I called my superiors and they confirmed this was not a joke. We had no idea what was going on. Meredith and I got Amanda off the pond and woke Amy, and we headed to the office. The waiting room should have been packed with patients morning of June 29th, 1999, but it was empty. Through the sliding glass window, I could see 6 unusually large men in suits, one in the hallway outside the office area with my visibly shaken office staff. The other 5 were in the chart racks, removing records. I turned to my wife. Somebody messed up, all right. You better wait here. I don't think this will take long. I walked in there. Which one of you guys is Vanderland? The largest of the strangers turned to face me. I am. Whoa, I thought. I may have seen an offensive lineman or a professional wrestler bigger than this guy in the past, but right now I couldn't picture one. I'm Dr. Czop. Would you mind telling me what the hell is going on here? So he took me to a room. Dr. Czop, you've been charged in federal court with a felony punishable by up to 4 years in prison. The charges stem from an investigation into fraudulently issuing time off to General Motors employees in exchange for money. Since bills and disability forms go through the mail, this constitutes mail fraud, which is a federal offense. This document delineates the nature of the investigation and the formal charges.
Wow. So what had actually happened?
Here's what my attorney said. He said, this is Blue Cross, and the AFL-CIO went to Blue Cross, said, our rates are too high, and you need to do something about it. And they said, it's not us, it's those cheating doctors that are doing this. And so they put together a sting operation. I mean, they must have pressed a button to see who cost them the most money. Mm-hmm. I'm working in a 5-factory GM town. I had patients galore mm-hmm. from those factories. And when I didn't think they could work, I put them off. Mm-hmm. And I was happy that they had that benefit from their employer. But I'd never been instructed on how much time off to give or this or that. It was never part of my education. And so there was a lot of time. And the part of that was because in Vietnam, as the medic, if somebody came to me and said, Doc, I can't go out today. I'm short and I got pain. I don't want to get killed. And one time Johnson overheard one of them talk to me about that. He said, you know, homie, get your ass out of here, you know. I told you no. And, but, you know, shit happened mm-hmm. when they went out and could be killed. So I was very careful to make sure this person's able to work and it's safe for them to do so, and so on. So their data came, let's see, they put together a sting operation. They investigated 13 doctors across the state who had large amounts of workman's comp or something time. And they sent an investigator into my office 2 times. They investigated 13 doctors across the state. 12 were guilty of exactly what they said they were doing, selling time off to GM employees. 1 wasn't. That was me. Mm-hmm. But if they let me out of this, they would jeopardize their other convictions. That's what my attorney said. So I had called a buddy of mine, an attorney, on the way into the office and told him what was going on. He was up the street at a car dealership getting something done. So we get there, my wife and I, we go in, we meet Vanderland, he lays the stuff down, and I start reading through shit. And 17 visits with patients that I had time off. They were all legitimate, well documented, but there were 2 visits from the undercover investigator that I remembered vividly. And he says, would you, I finished reading them, and he says, can I ask you some questions? And I said, if you want to ask me about the weather or how the tigers are doing, sure. But if you want me to talk about anything in these materials, you know I want to have an attorney present. I didn't get those words out of my mouth. There's a knock at the door. Here's my buddy from the car dealership comes in, and he says, I'm Dr. Czop's attorney. What's going on? I gave him the materials that I had just looked at. And he looked at them and said, I'd like to speak with my attorney, with my client alone. Mm-hmm. And he let us go into my office. And Randy was dumbfounded. He said, I thought it was a joke. I drive in, I see one U.S. government car, then another and another. And I thought it was a stripper or something somebody got. And he said, this is this is serious shit, and it's out of my field, but I'm going to put you in touch with somebody who will take care of it. So I explained to Randy what I did, why I did it, and so on. And he left, we left, and I get a call as we're leaving the parking lot, and I didn't recognize the voice, and I answered the phone, Dr. Czop. He said, this is Max Hoffman. No. He says, Randy Hackney called me and told me about your situation. We need to get together. And I said, well, when do you want to do it? He said, well, where are you? I said, I'm in the car on the way back to Charlotte to turn around. So we did, and we went and met with him. And he explained what would happen and all this, you know. And I said, he says, this is serious stuff. I said, no, this is unadulterated bullshit. You know, I didn't sell time off to anybody. I said, you know, and the investigator, what I did with the investigator, the first time I thought this was a guy in trouble and needs a break. And I told him I would take him on as a patient and cover him for the week that he had missed from work. But next time you come in before you get that stressed out, or I'll, you know. So that was the first visit, which was innocent enough. And he was wearing a wire, but the wire malfunctioned at that first visit. At the second visit, he comes in crazy. I thought crazy. I mean, he was different demeanor entirely, and he says, I'm going to play golf, and you're going to cover me. And it was all downhill from there. And I thought, I hope he's got golf clubs in his car instead of a shotgun or something. If he doesn't get what he wants. There was a guy shot up the Wixom Ford plant. There was a woman that killed an ophthalmologist at U of M. And I thought, there's crazy people out there, and this is one of them. I got to get him out of here. But I thought, what are my options? I can't call the police. He hasn't done anything. I can't have him voluntarily committed. He wants to go play golf, not go see two shrinks. And I can't have him involuntarily committed because he won't go. So I decided I'm giving him the week off. And I said, I can't put you off to play golf. Do you have any medical problems? I've had some back issues. I'll put it down that you've had a flare of back problems, and I'm putting you off. But when you come back, you get in here, and we'll get to the bottom of all this. And then I'm writing this up, and he says, I've already said I'm going to give it to him. he's standing between me and the door, dressed in black from head to toe. He says, I really need this, and you're the only thing standing in my way. Okay, so I shook the pen a couple of times. I got to get a pen. I went over to the drawer where the scalpels used to live, and I was going to get a scalpel and put it up my sleeve. And if he made any move towards me, I was going to go for his carotid artery, because I was convinced he's crazy and we're going to get killed if he doesn't get what he wants and gets out of here. So that was the undercover investigator visit.
What's the end result of all of this?
End result, 3 years go by. They keep telling me they get plea bargain, plead guilty to 1 count of mail fraud, lose your license, don't go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
No, I want a trial. Okay. Time goes by. They want to give you this deal. No, I don't want that. I want a trial. And finally, they offered prosecutorial diversion. This is 3 years now. Meanwhile, I had to sell the farm. Well, before we leave the attorney's office, the new attorney's office, I couldn't ask the question, but my wife said, and what are your charges for a case like this? He said $25,000 up front, and it could be more than $100,000 if there's a trial. Mm-hmm. I couldn't talk. And she said, and she was rational as could be. How could you, and how do you want to be paid for that? $25,000 now, and keep the retainer replenished or whatever. So that was I went from my office to that guy. And so anyways, it was 3 years before the prosecution would talk to me. Mm-hmm. And they were offering prosecutorial diversion.
What does that mean?
That means there would be, if I had to plead guilty to writing a false diagnosis for that guy's visit, which I did. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought I was doing the world a service. Mm-hmm. You know, I wasn't buying time. I wasn't selling time. I was buying it. And you plead guilty to that, and you have a year of probation. You pay back the $131 the undercover investigator paid to your office, and you do 300 hours or 400 hours of community service. I said, no, I want a trial. The guy says, no, you don't. He says, there'll be somebody on that jury that was harmed by a doctor, or his relative was, who will sit through the trial falling asleep, and when it's over, you'll say you're guilty. And that's that. You don't want that. I was playing softball for Cooley Law School's faculty team for 12 years. He says, talk to all your friends in law. And Tom Brennan was the founder of Cooley Law School, former Chief Justice of, what the hell he was, Michigan Supreme Court. And he was a friend of mine, and he agreed, you don't want a trial. You know, this is the government's way of saying, we messed up, let us out. Mm-hmm. I didn't like it, but I took it. And we came to Grand Rapids to meet with the prosecution to see if I qualified for prosecutorial diversion. And I talked to the lady there, and then Merity talked to the lady there, and then we met. And she says, and what did you do? I said, I wrote a false diagnosis. And she said, and why did you do that? And I told her. And she looked at my attorney and says, and that's what this case is about? And he said, yes, ma'am. And she said, I'm going to recommend you for the prosecutorial diversion. And I know it's been difficult, but it should be, you'll be okay. So one of the worst parts of this whole thing was the guy from the AFL-CIO that was telling Blue Cross need to lower your rates was a patient of mine, a friend of mine. And he had taken me, and Richard Whitmer, Gretchen's father, was the guy in charge of Blue Cross. And this guy, my friend Frank, had taken me to their Whitmer's house for a party for his wife who had cancer, and I met her and Gretchen, and I guess you know, how can this happen to me? You know, so anyway, that's
well, that's pretty thing. Okay, we've been kind of on a fairly extended conversation, so wandered off into a whole bunch of other places. I guess I'd like to kind of pull things around to sort of where are you now in terms of dealing with your PTSD and the rest of life and things? Kind of where have you gotten to?
After the stress of everything in the case for 3 years, moving out to the farm, selling the farm within 10 months, moving back one street over from where we had left. It didn't go well. I was not a happy camper. I was not a nice man. And the PTSD played itself out with just different characters. And the second marriage tanked. And I was seeing another counselor. He'd seen us before with issues of raising a blended family and so on. And but you know, he told me the same thing. Why don't you try an SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, a medication? I said, it's an antidepressant. He says, I think you're somewhat depressed, but it's good for anger management and it's good for PTSD. I said, here we go again, PTSD, you know. And I told him I don't believe I have that, and why. But I was in such a bad straits that I started the Paxil. And Paxil, within 48 hours, it's supposed to take a couple of weeks. Within 48 hours, I felt relieved and better. And I took it. The only problem with Paxil was delayed ejaculation, which took the only pleasurable human experience that's not taxed or has calories and turned it into work, almost. So I took it, and it worked well. But then later on, I wanted to finish the book, and I had, you know, I didn't give a shit about anything. I had no inspiration, no drive to finish the book, because I'm on Paxil. So I stopped it. It was a bad idea. So, but then let's see. Yeah, we weren't divorced yet, but we're separated, and the social director of my life, since I'm 19 years old, lived in on Oahu, and we had palled around, since college and after Vietnam, 3 months, and we used to get together for Super Bowl. I hadn't talked to him for 17 years. And, we used to play guitar at parties. We'd both play, another guy would play harmonica. The harmonica player, him and his wife were killed in a house fire in DeWitt. He was a patient of mine and stuff. And I called this guy in Hawaii to tell him about him being killed. And we talked. Do you ever go to Vegas? Yeah, I go to Vegas. Okay, let's get together. We did. Hadn't seen him for 17 years. It was like, you know, we'd never been apart.
Mm-hmm.
So we hooked up from then on for Super Bowl. So after we're separated, the third marriage, she says, why don't you take some time off, get together with the boys in Honolulu for Super Bowl. Okay, so I did. And I couldn't travel when the case was going on, couldn't leave the state yet, but now go ahead. And so I'm on the plane, and I got seat A, and seat C, there's no B, here's C, it's a good-looking girl. I said, I'm A, so I had to go to my seat. And I'm working on the core content review of family medicine to keep up to date and stuff. And finally, what the hell do I need from here for 4 days in Vegas? So I packed it up. So I started talking to her. I said, so who do you like in the Super Bowl? And I thought, you know, she won't know shit about that. Well, she starts talking about it, and she says, you know, well, Carolina's good, don't get me wrong, but Brady's been there. He's been the MVP, and he's a Michigan guy. Put your money on Brady. Mm-hmm. And she went on, you know, and I said, geez, what do you do? Said, I retired from the state. What'd you do? I'm just retired from the state. So I said, no, I'm not, you know, I'm not the IRS or what'd you do? I ran men's prisons. I'm a corrections officer for 26 years. And she got in trouble with taxes and the IRS, PTSD. It was like she's living my life somewhere else. And, you know, she started talking and hasn't stopped. So when I got home, I introduced my wife to her, you know. This is so-and-so from the plane, and she lives in Grand Rapids. Oh, nice to meet you. Okay, I'll see you. But I was happily married at the time. I didn't know my wife wasn't, but I was. And shortly thereafter, you know, we're separated. She's filed, and I was seeing a psychologist from the VA in Lansing, but there was 4 or 5 of us he came to see, and then there was just me. So I said, I'll come to Grand Rapids and see you, Bill. So I pulled out her card. She gave me about jalapeno peppers if you want, you know, salsa and stuff like this. And I called her. I said, I got business. Remember me from the plane going to Vegas? Oh, yeah, she said. I don't know if she did or not. I said, I got business in Grand Rapids. Would you want to meet for breakfast? Yeah. My golf league's canceled. It's raining. We met at Sundance on 28th Street. And that was the beginning.
Okay. And so by this time, had you kind of recognized that, okay, you were dealing with PTSD, or this was, had you kind of conceded that by then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and she knew about it. Kathy, my wife now, knew about it. And my daughter, Kathleen, was teaching school in Cambodia. And I didn't go see her when she was in the Peace Corps in Africa, but she says, you know, I want you to come see me here. And I said, well, we found a time where we could. And she said, it's going to be during the water festival in Phnom Penh, the capital. And that brings in an extra 1 million people to here, and it's already crowded. Would you consider going back to Vietnam for a visit? I said, no. And she says, I know the area. I can make the arrangements. It'll go smoothly. I don't want to go to Angkor Wat and show you the temples. I've done enough of that. So would you at least think about it? And I said, yeah, okay. There, I thought about it. No. So my wife says, you're carrying a ton of baggage from that thing. You need to go see her and go back there. Dump some of that baggage off. So I did, and it was therapeutic. So no, it's not gone. It'll never be gone.
No.
You know? So, but I try to avoid working on it. I'm in. I did a few things. After Vietnam, I tried to learn to say hello, goodbye, please, and thank you in every language I encountered, because I didn't want to be anybody's enemy again. Mm-hmm. And if I ever went to the country, how much trouble can I get if that's all I can say? Mm-hmm. So I did that. I joined the Kent County Veterans Honor Guard. And then I joined the PTSD group at the Vet Center in Grand Rapids. Mm-hmm. And I've been involved in those things, and that's my main, it's one of my main things that helps. Mm-hmm. The other was, when I retired, I had three things I wanted to do. Finish the book that I've been working on for 16 years, but I thought it was long enough mm-hmm. where the Department of Justice wouldn't get mad at me. I wanted to take my board exam, family medicine boards, get my licenses and everything new, and then apply, then credential with a locum tenens outfit so I could still do some doctoring mm-hmm. for a while. So I did all that, and I got prostate cancer, and that threw things off a little bit. And I was going to work at a place in Kokomo, Indiana for 4 days a week. They wanted me, I wanted them. All you got to do is get a Indiana license, which is merely a formality. I sent away for that, filled out the paperwork. Have you ever undergone prosecutorial diversion for anything? Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. You need to appear before the board down here in person and explain that. I explained that. They didn't give a shit. When I was done, they said, okay, you're not going to get an Indiana license. You have two options. You can withdraw your request, or we'll refuse you, and it'll go down as a national data bank entry that you sought licensure in another state and were denied.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So PTSD and the case did it again, mm-hmm. you know. So anyways, I started to try to get in shape, called a buddy of mine from high school that had a basketball team down in Birmingham, Alabama. Catholic Central Detroit has a good alumni thing, a magazine and everything, and I'd see pictures of his team down there, and the guys from our class would play stuff. So I asked him, you need a warm body? And he said, yeah, if we'd have had you last year, we'd have won everything. That's a lie. Mm-hmm. But so we have something we do in New Orleans, and on the way back, we set up to meet up in Birmingham. He came to the hotel, picked me up. We went right to the gym. I hadn't seen him for 50 years, and we started playing basketball, and I've been playing with the team ever since. That's cool. So that's one of my biggest things. This gives me something to look forward to mm-hmm. all the time. You know, skills competition, Michigan games, other state games, and the nationals.
Right. So
in 2017, well, I tore my Achilles in 2016, 9 days before the Michigan games, and they were going to come up. They did, and I showed up. You know, I was cast and all that shit, and but in 2017, I was able to play, and we played the nationals in Birmingham, and we won a gold medal.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Now, there's one last thing that I want to get in here, and that is your experience with Art Prize.
Oh, Art Prize.
Art Prize, like the Grand Rapids Festival and so forth, because you had created a work of art that was inspired by your Vietnam experience.
Yeah, we're right there from what I just said. I had applied to Art Prize, all the venues that I wanted to, that I listed that I would like to go to, mm-hmm. refused. There was one left. I went to Birmingham. We won a gold medal. I came home that day, and I looked in my emails, and one of the best places, Marriott downtown, said yes. They accepted it. So I had my gold medal. I had my acceptance to Art Prize.
Okay. And explain what you created for Art Prize.
Was the drawing of the bed of the day that Neil Armstrong was hopping around on the moon, and I was trying to kill a kid that I thought was bad.
All right.
This is the kid that had stepped on the stake and was injured, and I was working on him. And the guy running over to the track, that's his brother. Oh, way over there by the track. And my team had taken this kid's grandfather.
So the team is running out here.
They're in the wood line. And the grandpa's showing them where weapons and rice are stashed. And they're coming out, and they spot me with the gun on the kid. And they yell for me to, Doc, don't shoot, don't shoot. He's, you know, the chief's grandson, he's brain injured, and so on. Okay, this is, I get back to the aid station and feeling rotten about myself. And I go in, and everybody's around that little black and white television. And that's Neil Armstrong. I said, what now? I thought, you know, we got World War III. And they said, no, he just landed, the first man on the moon, shut up. And I just walked out, hung my rifle up, and went outside. But these are the other medics. Is outside the aid station. I just walked out, sat on a garbage can, and that's Band-Aid, our dog. And, you know, I was feeling really bad. And Band-Aid just jumped in my lap. And like I always say, you'd thought I invented dog food, but he thought I was just the greatest thing since sliced bread. And that was the most therapeutic encounter I had, and it was with a dog.
So I'd just like to thank you very much for
Oh,
sharing
man.
this particular story today, which took all kinds of interesting directions. But it's really part of just what war does to people, as well as it is also a survivor's story. I mean, you got through all that and you are here. So just thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for listening.